Don, hi again. Good to see you again this week. Uh, I saw Smirkanish this Saturday morning, and he really brought up, as I mentioned to you, an interesting topic that I want to discuss today. The DeSantis new law taking Disney status away, which in all appearances appears to be retaliation for Disney's position on his bill that was related to education and teaching children before third grade. So I want to premise this, and I know we mutually agreed that this would be a good topic to discuss today. Before I start, I would like to keep out, or I want to discuss methods that both the right and the left have in and not legislature, in free speech, I guess. I guess it's a free speech. It really comes down to a free speech issue, a little bit of Citizens United, and what has been given the term cancel culture. So, and I mentioned to you that we may have some agreement on the law itself, which is why I don't want to get into it. I want to keep it on how the right and left are strategically implementing their ideology or policy and maybe trying to impose their will on others. So anyway, just some background. We have DeSantis, who passed a law that, correct me if I'm wrong, illegalized any type of gender identity discussion between the ages of preschool and third grade that Disney verbally or Disney vocally opposed. In short response, shortly afterwards, DeSantis passed a law that took away Disney's ability to self-govern. And I'm deliberately being general and not giving the specifics of things because this was in the news. We can all research this on our own. So this, Smirkanish discussed this, but the gist of this discussion was that this was retaliation. It either was or certainly had the strong appearance of retaliation. And my thought was that DeSantis was infringing upon Disney's corporate free speech, which has been protected by Citizens United. Corporations are given the right of speech through campaign donations. And it reminded me of DeSantis's response to what Disney's doing and the right's criticism of Disney. To me, no, let me say I said that wrong. I guess it looked to me that the right was guilty of what it was complaining the left does, cancel culture. That DeSantis, in retaliating against Disney, was engaging in that same objectionable behavior that the right criticized the left for. So again, we might agree with DeSantis both times. We might. I don't want to get into that. I'm not saying I do. I'm not saying I don't. But I think it's more interesting for our discussion, our methods. The left that sometimes boycotts companies like MyPillow, or there's too many. I can even leave those examples to you. We can complain about the left when consumers put their political speech in their purchasing power and boycott, whether right or wrong, someone on the right. But isn't that, so if you're going to say the left is outrageous for cancel culture, isn't that, whether we would agree with him or not, isn't that what DeSantis was doing? Floor's yours.
Well, I think you present this in such a way that there really is no choice but to agree with you in conception or in theory. But in reality, I don't think that we're conflating the same things whatsoever. I don't think that cancel culture is what's going on in regards to what Florida did with Disney. And here's the reason why I say that. I think we have to get down to definitions of what do these words mean and why are they important. In cancel culture, these are groups, activist groups that actively go out and they have one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to destroy either an individual or an entity. That is their purpose. You don't get on board with their agenda, you're gone. Now, if we rewind and we look at the situation regarding Disney with Florida, Florida is not trying to put Disney out of business. They're not trying to run Disney off per se. But what they are saying to Disney is you need to check yourself. And so if you want to say in one regard, there's an issue of retribution, well, yeah, maybe, but let's talk about that. I mean, because I think there are two primary issues at play here. And these are really, really important issues when we think about the role of government, okay? And this is the difference between cancel culture, either by a corporation, a nonprofit, an activist group, by individuals, and by what government does, especially when we look at this situation in Florida. You preface this by saying that the law that Florida passed was designed to prohibit woke educators from teaching kindergartners to third graders about gender orientation or transgender issues. Now, how could any of us possibly argue with that? Should teachers be teaching young children these types of materials or these things? Should they even be addressing it with children?
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Okay. I premised my discussion with saying that I think that that's a good discussion for another time. And I don't mind discussing that. But to me, today, I wanted to be about tactics and methods and this whole narrative of cancel culture. Go ahead.
Well, I think we have to get behind the tactics or the strategies and the tactics. Why are the strategy and the tactics even there? I'm going to give you two reasons.
Well,
from a conservative point of view.
Go first.
All right, I'll give you two reasons. The first is that the government has responsibility to protect children. End of the discussion. We spent decades talking about protecting kids from pedophilia and pornography on the internet and all kinds of crazy stuff out there that the left had been promoting for quite some time. And fortunately, we got to a place in society where we said, you know what, we agree, we need to legislatively fix some things to protect kids from bad stuff. You do something to a kid, there's going to be a price you pay. The second point is, and this is really the most important one from a constitutional angle, what about parental rights to ensure that kids learn the ABCs of education, reading, writing, mathematics, etc., and the right to teach kids their values, not Disney's values. Disney has already proven themselves to be off the rail. There's already videos out there of corporate meetings between executives and senior leaders talking about they're agreeing they're going woke. They're gonna push transgender issues in their children's programming and all kinds of stuff they're doing. But making it even worse, they said we're going to go after the state of Florida and we're going to push to get that law reversed. This "Don't Say Gay" bill, which is the biggest lie of them all. The legislation has nothing to do with any of that. Regardless, they said we're enacting a war on the state of Florida. We're going to do everything we can with the money that we earn through our business to overturn this law, which the conservatives rightly felt as a threat. They rightly felt that way. Wait a second, you're now saying you're gonna promote transgender issues in your own programming. You're going to go after us for protecting kids, and somehow the liberals want to make Disney the bad, or make the Florida Republicans the bad guy in all of this.
All right, let's not get too far. I have to jump in because there's more. We'll still go back and forth. But first thing you did that I want to take issue with in your portion of the talk is you imputed intent on what another actor was doing. With the left is out to quote unquote destroy. So we don't know what their intention is, whether the effect of what they do is destruction or not. Again, let's not enter that discussion. What they are doing is putting the power of the purse, saying, we decide to support or divest in South Africa for apartheid, or we decide this person is pursuing the big lie. We are choosing not to purchase from an organization who, in our opinion, is destroying democracy. This isn't what I want to discuss right now. You and I can talk about, all right, let's talk about LGBTQ issues. Let's talk about these and what should or shouldn't be taught. Deliberately, we're not having that discussion today. You know, I would love to have that discussion with you if you want, and we'll each take a position. What I'm talking about is that you have governments saying, I don't like what speech you're taking, or I don't like that you're objecting to my law. Therefore, I'm going to punish you. Now, you can say, wait, the role of government is to protect kids. Now, it's not what they're doing. What they're doing is they're responding by doing something that's a negative consequence to a corporate actor in response to an expression of value, whether you disagree or agree with what that expression of value was. So my response is, number one, we can discuss at a different time, but the right has a narrative saying the left is canceling. The left is trying to act heavy-handed with its spending power, are trying to, quote unquote, put a heavy hand on other people's value system. So my point today is a very narrow one. Don't both sides do the same thing? And isn't the right screaming too loud when they just say the left is doing what they, in fact, are doing themselves? That's my limited point today.
Well, I respectfully will say that I think that your angle is misguided. All right. From a
you see it as protecting children, correct?
Well, no, from a conservative point of view, in regards to, did the Florida legislature enact retribution on Disney? That's the question.
Anyway, right? Or yeah, the legislature, right. Okay.
Well, the legislature and DeSantis, the Republican Party in Florida, period.
And you earlier already said, could it have been maybe? So I know you're not going to say no, correct? Maybe is our minimum. At least we got a maybe.
We got a maybe. We got a maybe.
That's all. Here's my point.
But here's the thing. Whether it was retribution or not, there are a couple of things that are at play in this discussion. And the first piece that's at play is what I said earlier. Disney initiated this war when they said, we're going after you, Florida. Florida's response to that.
Wait a minute. I don't hear that.
Well, sure you do, because they said, we're coming after, we're going to put all our money into campaigns that take candidates that will support overturning your law.
But it is.
Okay. So, now they have the right to do it. I'm not saying they don't have the right to do it.
Don, let's just be careful. Real quick, I'll be quick. But let's be careful with language. You said Disney said, we're coming after you.
Absolutely.
No, they're saying we are supporting a political value system. Whether you think it's hurting children or not, they think that they're doing the right thing in representing what the majority of the people who are buying at Disney and work there. They believe they're supporting a majority of people. They're making a business decision is what they're doing.
Well, they might, and I hope it turns out to be a very bad decision.
Yeah, well, let's not get into that. Stay away from it. What we're talking about is Disney is doing its protected, its right of free speech protected by Citizens United.
And nobody's saying that they can't exercise their free speech. All Florida said was, at the end of the day, if you're going to behave this way, why should we incentivize this behavior by giving you special privileges?
Aren't they all behaving that way?
Hold on, that we don't give anybody else in the state of Florida. And that's exactly what was going on with that particular piece of legislation passed in the 1960s that incentivized them to come in and build on swamp lands and do things on lands that really nobody else wanted, couldn't use. And at that moment in time, it made some sense why Florida engaged in that particular relationship with Walt Disney Company. As time has gone along, there are some legitimate questions to be asked. Should taxpayer dollars be given to a company in the form of billions of dollars in tax cuts and benefits that empower them to turn around and use their money against the government that we just saved them? Instead, we should just level the playing field.
You're saying, quote unquote, against the government. They're not doing something against the government. They're trying to also protect the voters of Florida.
How is that? How would they, especially considering that even amongst Democrats, 54% of Democrats in Florida agreed with the legislation that was passed initially. And of course, the overwhelming majority of independents and Republicans. So how are they actually protecting the voters of Florida if the voters of Florida don't agree with them?
Well, look, I think it's important that I say I see your point, that you're making a good point. And I want to acknowledge that first before I continue, that if you are going to use the power of your, if you're going to act like, if you're going to use speech to weigh in on political issues, but yet we granted you something that was based upon a nonpartisan concept or theory, we're somewhat justified in response. Now, that is a better point. That I get that. That's a fair point. Let me acknowledge that. That having been said, someone who's saying, look, it's in our corporate interest because it's also in the same interests of those people of Florida that they believe they're behind what we're doing. You're just in power. We're representing a minority voice or a different group. That's where I think it gets muddier.
So let's flip that for just a second. That's in the corporate interest. What's in the taxpayer interest? Is it in the taxpayer interest to subsidize this massive corporation? It's the largest in the state of Florida to the tunes of billions of dollars, and nobody else gets that benefit in Florida?
It's a separate question. I guess
No. The questions go hand in hand, because if it's in the corporate interest, then it's also in the taxpayer/state interest to revoke that benefit when it's no longer needed, necessary, or justified.
I think that's an interesting discussion to have. Should Disney have the right to self-government? It is a pure concept. But should a legislature say, we don't like how this corporate actor is using its donations, its lobbying, its spending power, if they want to say, and then respond by doing something that would punish or hurt it? To me, that evokes a pattern of what I think both the left and right call cancel culture now, not good governance. You might be right, but to do it but when you act vengefully, it looks, whether you're right or wrong, you're engaging in behavior for an improper purpose.
My understanding of what happened here is that when Disney basically gave the reaction that they did, it just opened the door to something that the Republicans wanted to do anyway. This was something that was likely inevitable in the next number of years. They just ticked them off and it accelerated the process to do it now.
I would suggest that's poor timing.
It could, I don't think they care. And see, this is what we have to understand.
The right purports to care about what I would call, quote unquote, when people use their strength to impose their values on someone else. They're doing the same thing. Hold on. It's a point. Look, again, it's why we're discussing it, Don. I understand your point's different, but I also dispute that the left does what you suggest it does. But I think we have them in an obvious pattern, or at least appearances. Like how we both said, maybe, let's agree on maybe. And you're saying, well, wait a minute, they like the timing. So if you like the timing, then you like the idea of responding to political behavior with other political behavior. And that's what the left does. They're saying, look, if you're going to do something against our values, we are going to make sure we're going to punish you at your purse, where we're going to hit you where it hurts. Again, my original point is that both sides do it. Let's not complain about something that's quote unquote cancel culture. Both sides use their strength to try to promote what they believe in. That's my point of the week.
Well, I get your point, but I think there's so much more to it than the simplification that you've given it, because I think it completely comes back around to what I was talking about earlier. And if you want to have the discussion another time, that's great.
Sure, we can do it next week too. The whole idea of how we're teaching our kids.
Well, it's not just how we're teaching our kids,
What we're teaching.
And it's not just what we're teaching our kids, but what are the constitutional constraints around teaching our kids when we think about Supreme Court precedents in regards to due process clause in the 14th Amendment, and numerous Supreme Court rulings that affirm over and over again that parents have the direct care, upbringing, and education of their children, not a school district and not a governmental agency, whether it's a state or federal government.
So now you're against public school. So you're making an argument against the public school system, right?
Well, I'm saying that the school system should be teaching ABC 1, 2, 3. They shouldn't be teaching wokeism. They shouldn't be teaching transgender issues or any other sexual-based issue, in my personal opinion. And that's a responsibility of a parent.
And would you agree the Bible shouldn't be in there as well?
Well, see now, but you've got another conflict there, and that's the First Amendment. The student has a right to express their religious beliefs. So in that context, that's where you and I again would diverge, because
in a public school, Don?
Well, absolutely no different than anywhere else.
Well, so shouldn't the Quran be in there in a
if a student is of that faith, that is their constitutional right to carry a Quran in school.
So you don't want to weigh in on okay. Okay. All right. I think we so for future topics, we can discuss where do we draw the line on what's in a school and what's not. For instance, another NPR story.
She just has to bark right now, doesn't she?
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Chloe, come here, girl.
You have her. You've enlisted her to argue your points, but no, the whole idea of the NPR petition to remove the Bible because of the content in the Bible that talks about rape, sodomy, homosexuality, and immoral topics. It was a farce petition. Now he's making a political. Yeah, I'll post the article not only in the description portion here, but when we talk about it again, what's being burned in conservative circles or banned is also for being smutty, for being immoral, is also found in the Bible. It was this one petitioner's point. MP article. Viewers, please look at the description portion of the video for this story and the petition.
I think you're running circles around this, Larry, because you're asking two different constitutional amendments to contradict one another when they don't.
Well, that's something. All right, let's hold that one for next week. If you want to do it next week, we can again.
But I do want to just briefly get back to this issue about retribution, because I will cede to you that the Republicans in Florida did what they believe the voters wanted them to do. And I got a gut feeling that based on the polling that I've looked at, they're going to be rewarded handsomely for this come November. I don't think there's going to be a retribution against the Republican Party in Florida.
Oh, I don't necessarily. I'm not disputing that. I think Republicans are in good position. And I think here's another thing I want to speak up on right now, that if you have a landslide Republican wave at the midterms, it's not necessarily this indictment that Republicans or you may say it is. Isn't it expected? Isn't that the default for the Republicans to take control? Shouldn't that occur? Hasn't that always happened in our several last cycles around the midterms, irrespective of how well or poorly the president is governed?
There's a real short and easy answer to that question. When a president or the party in power goes off the rails, yes, it's expected, and that's I think
because we've had inaccurate statement. When they don't go off the rails, it happens.
No,
when they can govern at their highest level, it happens.
No, I don't. That's not necessarily true throughout the modern era. It was true in 2012 when President Obama had gone off the rails with Obamacare and enacted legislation.
True in 2018.
All right. So then again in 2018 with Trump,
right?
it happened
Obama,
there
Trump.
Right. But then again, it was because a lot of the voters that showed up to vote that time, it was in reaction to Trump.
It's always in
Okay.
reaction.
But
My
it doesn't
point is,
have
it's
now,
always reaction to the party in power.
Hold on. This time, it has much more to do with the fact that the Democratic Party completely thought they had a mandate that they were never given and went completely off of the rail. They had a chance to unite the country, bring it together, do smart things, and they blew it.
I would say the last three presidents did the same thing.
I would agree.
Including Obama. Had a chance
agree.
to unite the country, didn't. Trump
But
could
prior
have
to this,
been.
prior to this, it wasn't this seesaw thing going on prior to Clinton, I would say, because you had a stable country that believed that the Democratic Party was best to lead Congress until they kept proving that they weren't. And now we kind of had this seesaw going back and forth in Congress. And I think what's going to eventually happen is all of this wokeism, all of this outlandish left-wing stuff is finally going to settle the country into a Republican conservative mode with an opportunity to govern for the next 20 years. That's my prediction.
I would say that after Biden is voted out, the new administration, again, will have a grace period of 2 years, not 20.
It depends on who it is and how they govern.
For the degree of the swings.
Well, it depends on how they go. Remember,
it seems like we're always searching for the middle, irrespective of how governing is going.
Yeah, just remember in that discussion, that first 2 years of a first-term president, they always go too far. So with Trump, he went too far with the tax proposal that people went against. Obama went against. It was Obamacare.
Yeah, and let's look at Obamacare, and that's something that's now has bipartisan support. Had bipartisan support since he did that.
It didn't in 2012.
2010, right?
Well, no, at the
midterm, 2010. I know what you meant.
Yeah, 2010. Correct.
All right, so let's leave it there, just so we don't get too long, because we have a lot of great stuff to cover, and I want to give it the individual attention that it deserves. And Don, why don't we leave it up to viewers to weigh in the comments section of what they want to hear us talk about? But a default idea is I would like to discuss education and how much, to what extent, what should be taught in schools between CRT and those LGBT issues.
Sounds like a plan. I'm looking forward to it.
Got it. Another great week talking to you, Don. Thanks for joining me. Always. And I'll see you next week.
Looking forward to it.
You bet.